Antarctica is the coldest, quietest, and most remote place on our planet. But beneath its frozen seas, something totally unexpected is happening. Tiny creatures that stay small everywhere else on Earth grow into giant, almost horrifying versions of themselves here. Spiders the size of dinner plates, worms longer than your arm, and bugs that look straight out of a sci-fi movie. Why does this happen only in Antarctica? What is it about this icy world that turns ordinary animals into real-life monsters? Today, we plunge into freezing darkness to reveal the weird science behind these giants. The last ocean on Earth, humans still don't understand. You might think we know our own planet pretty well, especially when you think of places we've explored, maybe Mars or the surface of the Moon. But there's one corner of Earth that remains as mysterious as any alien world: the frozen seas around Antarctica, known as the Southern Ocean. It's kind of like the last frontier here on our planet, where we've barely scratched the surface. Think about this. Scientists estimate that over 80% of the world's ocean remains unexplored. And when it comes to the Antarctic seas, churned by storms, cloaked in ice, cold, it's even worse. One expert called the region a data desert, huge, remote, and poorly monitored. Why is it so little known? For one, it's simply brutal out there. The Southern Ocean is often the windiest part of the world's seas, massive waves, freezing temperatures, shifting ice. It's harsh even for experienced researchers. There are virtually no commercial shipping routes through these waters, meaning there's historically little reason for people to go there. It remains out of sight, out of mind, until now. But while we lacked either the curiosity or the ability, the Southern Ocean was quietly doing some of the most important work on this planet. It plays a huge role in regulating Earth's climate. Its cold waters absorb huge amounts of human-generated carbon dioxide, trapping it deep in the ocean for centuries. It also absorbs huge amounts of heat, slowing global warming. Moreover, the currents of the ocean carry nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus from the deep sea back up to the surface to feed plankton blooms, which sustain entire food webs, all the way from krill to whales. Despite this, until recently, we've only just begun to explore what lies beneath the ice, the strange, fragile ecosystems, the weird creatures adapted to freezing, sunless depths, and the surprising biodiversity that has evolved far removed from human interference. Current research on Antarctic sea spiders, for instance, has turned up many species living deep below in waters more than a kilometer deep, and much of that diversity remains undersampled. So this last ocean is not a merely poetic designation, it is a real one. The Southern Ocean remains the most mysterious marine frontier on Earth. The more scientists send ships, deep-sea robots and sensors into its depths, the more they discover how little we truly know. And every discovery of currents, climates, weird fish, or bizarre crustaceans holds clues not just about Antarctica, but about life on Earth itself. Why Antarctica is the closest thing we have to an alien planet. Imagine a location on Earth that is so extreme, so unlike anything you have ever experienced. It could well be another planet. That place is Antarctica, especially its deep seas, ice-covered lakes, and frozen deserts. It is not just cold, it is the coldest, driest, and windiest continent on this planet. Its interior temperature has routinely dropped below 50 degrees Celsius, 58 degrees Fahrenheit, and once reached the coldest temperature ever measured on Earth, 89.2 degrees Celsius, 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Rain? Almost none. It's technically a desert, with snowfall often less than what the Sahara gets in a year. But it's not just the climate that makes Antarctica seem alien. Much of the life on and beneath the ice barely resembles anything we're used to. On land, the continent supports only a handful of hardy plants and tiny creatures, like a flightless midge, the insect Belgica antarctica, struggling to survive on desolate, infertile ground. The real strangeness, though, is under the sea and ice. The ocean around Antarctica, the Southern Ocean, uses its cold, swirling currents and unique chemistry to support entirely different ecosystems. It generates what is referred to as Antarctic bottom water, one of the densest and coldest water masses on Earth, widespread across all major ocean basins. Under the ice shelves, several kilometers thick, they found whole ecosystems that were thriving in total darkness at near freezing temperatures and near zero light, living off nothing but trace chemicals and ancient organic deposits. In one case, a subglacial lake that had been sealed off for millions of years was found to host thousands of microbial species, living without sunlight, without plants, without obvious food. That sort of life, slow, chemical-based, deeply hidden, sounds more like something you'd envision on Jupiter's moon Europa or another icy world than on Earth. Indeed, some scientists refer to Antarctica as an earthly analogue for extraterrestrial life. The Southern Ocean itself behaves in uncanny ways. Its freezing, salt-heavy waters circulate in enormous loops around Antarctica. Isolating currents make the continent biologically remote, cutting it off from the rest of Earth's ecosystems. So, when you think about Antarctica, don't think of just snow, penguins, and silent ice fields. Think of a living world unlike anything else, a continent colder than any desert, darker than the deepest ocean, and more isolated than any other habitat on Earth. The deep sea law that turns small creatures into monsters. The waters around Antarctica are like nature's slow cooker. Everything moves, eats, and grows according to a completely different timetable compared with the rest of the world. A big reason is rather simple. Cold water holds more dissolved oxygen and makes animals use their energy more slowly. That higher ratio between oxygen available and oxygen needed lets some cold water animals grow larger than their warm water cousins without hitting the usual limits that stop growth elsewhere. Scientists refer to this idea as the oxygen temperature explanation for polar gigantism. Cold also slows metabolism. When your body is cold, everything inside works more slowly. Hearts beat less, digestion takes longer, and animals need less food moment to moment. That slow pace can favor bigger bodies because large animals lose heat more slowly and can store energy for long, lean times. In Antarctic fish like the ice fish, we see extreme versions of this. They lack red blood cells and hemoglobin, yet survive because the cold, oxygen-rich water dissolves enough oxygen directly in their blood to meet needs. Their whole physiology, huge hearts, thin blood, slow growth, is shaped by that icy environment. There's another part to the story. In very cold seas, life moves slowly enough that predators are less constant, and competition can be different. Fewer fast, efficient hunters and a patchy food supply create ecological openings. When food comes in big but rare pulses, like a plankton bloom or a whale fall, being big can help an animal gobble more resources in one go, or store energy to wait for the next boom. In short, empty or lightly crowded ecosystems give small species room to evolve larger sizes because the usual checks-fast predators, constant competition, aren't as strong. But the oxygen idea isn't the whole answer. Some experiments and field studies show the pattern is complex. Not every Antarctic group follows it, and some large species don't perform better under low oxygen the way the simplest version of the hypothesis predicts. That's led scientists to refine the model, mixing oxygen, temperature, life history, and ecological context to explain why gigantism appears in some lineages and not others. In other words, polar gigantism is a team effort of several environmental forces, not a single magic bullet. Low temperatures also stretch lifespans. Slow metabolism plus stable cold conditions often equate to growing slowly but living longer. Some Antarctic invertebrates and fish age on a scale of decades. Longer lives give more time for growth and for rare big-sized traits to become established in populations. Add to this sporadic food, few predators, and plenty of dissolved oxygen, and the Antarctic recipe for monster-sized but slow and well-adapted beasts starts to make sense. Finally, remember, evolution works with trade-offs. Big can be great in the cold. It saves energy, stores food, helps survive long winters, but it also ties an animal to a niche. If the Antarctic waters warm or oxygen patterns change, those giant specialists may struggle. That's why understanding the real mix of oxygen, cold, food, lifespan, and predator pressure is not only fascinating science, it's crucial for predicting how these eerie giants will fare as the planet changes. The 4-foot sea spider that shouldn't exist. If you thought spiders only crawl on land, think again. Lurking in the dark, icy depths around Antarctica is a creature that could easily be a monster out of a sci-fi horror movie. A sea spider whose legs are so long it could span nearly 4 feet. Sea spiders, or more precisely, cycnogonids, are weird arthropods but aren't true spiders. While the body remains tiny, the spindly legs stretch wide, giving them a ghost-like appearance as they creep across the sea floor. Some pycnogonids of the Southern Ocean reach extraordinary sizes. For example, Colossendice colossea may have a leg span of 70 centimeters, about 2.3 feet or more than a meter from tip to tip if it spreads all 8 legs wide. Scientists have termed this phenomenon polar gigantism. In a few other species, like Decolopoda australis, the body diameter alone can reach 30 centimeters, roughly the size of a small chihuahua. What makes these creatures so wildly large? The reason for this is rooted in the alien-like conditions of Antarctica's deep sea. The water is cold and moving slowly, and because of this, oxygen dissolves more easily in it. That extra oxygen, mixed with a sluggish metabolism brought on by the cold, lets these animals grow bigger than similar species in warmer waters without starving their bodies. Deep beneath the waves, where the pressure is extreme and sunlight barely reaches, food is scarce. In that lightless world, large is a survival advantage. A bigger sea spider can store more energy, wait out lean times, and take down larger prey like jellyfish, anemones, or soft-bodied invertebrates. Their long, proboscis, a straw-like mouth allows them to suck juices out of prey the way a vampire crab might. Still, records about their giants often come with caution. Some sensational stories about 4-foot sea spiders detected near Antarctica have turned out to be exaggerations or misunderstandings. According to Snopes, many of the huge sea spiders discovered around Antarctica in recent expeditions were under 10 inches long, big for a sea spider, but far from 4 feet. And yet, the evidence from the deep sea is this. These are real, long-legged arthropods, wandering an alien world under the ice. Not quite a 4-foot spider in the human sense, but something far stranger. Their bodies are tiny, their legs skeletal and eerie, and their movements slow and deliberate, as if time itself moves differently down there. The deep-sea bugs the size of rabbits. There's a bug that's the stuff of sci-fi horror movies, but is totally real. Meet the deep-sea amphipods, the bugs of the deep, some of which are almost rabbit-sized, compared to the tiny, shrimp-like versions that most people picture in their minds. These creatures reside in the dark and cold regions of Earth's oceans, and some of them are really gigantic compared to the norm. Most amphipods are small, often just a few millimeters to a couple of centimeters long, the kind you find in coastal waters or on the sea floor. In the deep ocean, however, there exist some enormous amphipods. The star among these is Alicella gigantea, known to be the world's largest amphipod. Some of the specimens recorded reached a length of up to 34 centimeters, about 13.4 inches. For a creature whose relatives are often tiny and almost invisible, that size is monstrous. For further comparison, whereas the typical amphipod might be no longer than your fingernail, A. gigantea can be as big as a loaf of bread, or roughly the body size of a rabbit, if you count length, not shape. Indeed, many deep-sea snorkelers and scientists alike commonly report seeing them and being amazed by how big they looked compared to what was expected. These giant amphipods live deep in the abyss, often thousands of meters below the surface, where the darkness is absolute, the pressure crushing, and the food scarce. Their secrets have remained mostly hidden, since humans seldom reach those depths. And research tools to explore such extreme environments have, until recently, been limited. What is wild is that recent research puts forward the belief that A. gigantea is far from some sort of obscure oddity spotted once in a blue moon, but may actually be widespread across the oceans. One 2025 study compiled 195 records from 75 different locations in the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans. The researchers estimated that this giant amphipod may inhabit approximately 59% of the world's oceans, showing its deep-sea world to be vast and possibly full of giant bugs. These amphipods are more than big, they're adaptive in size. Living deep with extreme pressure and cold, they've evolved methods to cope with conditions that would kill most life. A large body size could help them store energy, take long periods without food, and make it easier to get around the deep-sea terrain. The ice fish with ghost blood that should be impossible. A fish whose blood isn't red or even pink, but nearly transparent. That's exactly what Antarctic ice fish is. The only known vertebrate that lives without hemoglobin. The iron-rich protein that gives almost all animals their red blood and helps transport oxygen. That sounds impossible, since oxygen transport seems so critical for any vertebrate animal. But the ice fish flipped that rule on its head. In the icy waters surrounding the Antarctic Ocean, cold water carries a lot more dissolved oxygen than warmer seas. That extra oxygen means, combined with the fact that the cold dramatically slows down metabolic needs, the ice fish don't need hemoglobin to get enough oxygen into their bodies. Instead, oxygen dissolves directly into their blood plasma and diffuses through their enlarged gills and skin. Because they have no red blood cells, their blood contains only about 1/10 the oxygen carrying capacity of that of a typical red-blooded fish. To compensate for this, ice fish have developed remarkable changes. They pump a lot more blood, thanks to hearts much larger by proportion than typical fish hearts. Their circulatory system carries a far larger blood volume, and their bodies are designed to maximize oxygen absorption. Even their muscles are different. Many species of ice fish also lack myoglobin, the oxygen-binding protein that normally occurs in muscle tissue. That is literally unheard of among other vertebrates. It is as if one took the motor out of a car and expected it to move. But here in this frozen laboratory of nature, it works. Freezing water survival requires more than just clever oxygen tricks. The Antarctic waters in which they live hover around the freezing point, and so ice fish manufacture special anti-freeze proteins. These proteins prevent ice crystals from forming inside their tissues, including blood, heart, and blood vessels. Otherwise, the cold could kill them by freezing their insides. Of course, this life without red blood comes at a cost. Generally speaking, ice fish are less active and much slower than their red-blooded relatives. Sudden demands like intense swimming or activity are harder for them because of their less efficient oxygen transport system. And if their frigid, oxygen-rich home warms even a little, their survival may be in jeopardy. Warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen. Without hemoglobin, ice fish would struggle badly. The Antarctic worms that grow bigger than your forearm. Down in the freezing depths around Antarctica, there dwell a group of worms that are so big they could be bigger than your forearm, and they look like something out of a horror movie. One of the best known is Eulogisca gigantea, a scale worm that has been found crawling along the ocean floor under sheets of ice in the Southern Ocean. Unlike the earthworms you dig up in gardens, E. gigantea has a flat, segmented body covered in shimmering armor-like scales called elytra that sometimes look metallic or golden. These worms reach lengths of around 20 cm, about 8 inches. And for some individuals, their body width can be quite thick, making them far more substantial than what we usually call a worm. What makes them extra chilling are their hunting tools. E. gigantea doesn't feed on tiny particles or algae. Instead, it uses a long, retractable mouthpart, a proboscis, that houses powerful jaws capable of biting and tearing prey, other worms, small crustaceans, maybe even unsuspecting sea spiders. After feeding, that mouthpart folds back inside the body in a way almost like a horror movie creature retreating into its shell. These worms live on the seabed at depths often ranging from 500 m to over 900 m, under crushing pressure and near freezing temperatures. Most animals that tried their luck here died long ago, but E. gigantea survived and even thrived, adapting to this alien environment with armor, jaws, and an appetite for creatures small enough to fall prey. The phenomenon that allows such worms to grow big and survive in a place that seems hostile to life is part of a larger pattern called polar gigantism. Many species in cold, polar and deep-sea waters of Earth end up much bigger than their cousins in temperate zones. For animals like scale worms or sea spiders, cold water slows metabolism, oxygen dissolves more easily, and food competition or predator pressures are different, all of which can favor larger, slow-living creatures. The killer sponge. Deep in the ocean, even off icy Antarctica, some sponges act more like underwater predators than passive filters. Such creatures, known as carnivorous sponges, hunt by growing strange hooked arms or filaments and waiting for prey to wander into them. While most sponges filter the water through their pores to consume small particles, carnivorous sponges have totally abandoned this way of life. Instead of filtering plankton or microscopic debris, they capture small animals, mostly crustaceans like amphipods or copepods, with sticky or hook-like structures composed of microscopic skeletal elements known as spicules. When a shrimp or small crab brushes against one of these filaments, it gets entangled, like hitting invisible underwater fishing lines. Once the victim is stuck, the sponge doesn't swallow it as a fish would. Instead, it slowly wraps its own cells around the trapped animal, forming a kind of external digesting pouch. Over the course of days, sometimes up to 10 days for larger prey, the sponge secretes enzymes, dissolves the soft parts of the prey, and absorbs the nutrients. Later, it may spit out the indigestible parts like shells. This whole lifestyle makes sense only in the harsh world of the deep sea. Cold, dark, and often almost empty of food particles drifting through the water. In such nutrient-poor environments, traditional filter feeding doesn't work well. There simply aren't enough tiny bits floating around. Growing arms to catch bigger, occasional meals becomes far more efficient. Recently, scientists found a particularly creepy relative of these sponges near Antarctica, nicknamed the death ball sponge. More than 3,600 meters down in the Southern Ocean, it has balloon-like orbs at the end of many arms covered with tiny hooks. Any small crustacean or similar creature that drifts too close gets snagged and slowly digested. The jelly that grows into a floating transparent trap. Perhaps one of the strangest of these is Deepstaria enigmatica, a jellyfish that seems to defy everything you've heard about sea life. It can grow a wide, thin, almost ghost-like bell, sometimes up to about 2 feet across, and it has no long stinging tentacles. Instead of tentacles, Deepstaria uses a completely different hunting plan. Visualize a large see-through umbrella drifting slowly in the dark water. If any small fish or other sea animal floats inside, the jellyfish contracts its bell slowly. That generates a gentle current and traps the prey inside the body of the jelly where it is digested. In short, prey floats in, gets stuck, and the jelly slowly absorbs it. This looks less like a jellyfish hunting and more like a trap set by an alien lurking in the deep. Deepstaria's body is almost entirely translucent. In the darkness of the deep sea, it's nearly invisible until it moves. That invisibility helps it surprise prey. Some scientists believe that Deepstaria is similar to a floating net. When its bell flutters in water, the motion draws in small animals and plankton. Once inside the bell cavity, those animals struggle in almost empty water and are digested. In extremely nutrient-poor, dark, deep-sea regions, this form of nourishment, slow, passive, but stealthy, proves to be a curiously successful survival strategy. Another denizen on this same dark dance floor is Stygiomedusa gigantea, commonly referred to as the giant phantom jelly. Its bell can reach over 1 meter wide, and its long ribbon-like arms reach up to about 10 meters. Like Deepstaria, Stygiomedusa doesn't always depend on stinging tentacles, but instead, it drifts along and traps unwary prey in its huge, transparent arms and bell. To small, deep-sea animals, encountering Stygiomedusa or Deepstaria would be like blundering into a ghostly trap. The jelly drifts in silence, invisible, until it closes around them. In a world of darkness and extreme pressure, so distant from sunlight, warmth, or comfort, this kind of patient, ghostly trap works fine. It just goes to prove that in the deep sea, life doesn't have to follow the rules we're used to. The deep waters around Antarctica are like a hidden, alien world right here on Earth. From ghost-blooded icefish to giant sea spiders, monstrous amphipods, armored worms, killer sponges, and floating jellies, life here defies what we think is possible. Cold, oxygen-rich waters, extreme pressure, and scarce food have shaped creatures that grow huge, live long, and hunt in bizarre ways. Every adaptation, from transparent blood to massive, grasping limbs, shows how evolution finds a way in the harshest conditions. Exploring these depths reminds us that Earth still holds mysteries stranger than science fiction, waiting for discovery. Thanks for getting into the icy depths with us. If you loved learning about these alien-like Antarctic creatures, from ghost-blooded icefish to giant worms and floating jelly traps, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more deep-sea mysteries. Drop a comment telling us which creature blew your mind the most, and share this video with friends who love the weird and wonderful side of nature. Hit the bell icon so you never miss our explorations into the strangest corners of our planet. Until next time, keep wondering. The ocean is full of surprises.